36 gashes, 36 deaths delivered by a single person, a figure Union forces called the Ghost of Tennessee. Yet what turned a 57-year-old tobacco planter into the war's deadliest marksman? And why has his tale been so stubbornly erased from memory by history? This is no account of massive battles or rival armies. Instead, here is the true story of Jack Henson, a man who declined to pick any allegiance until the war selected one for him. Envision this. A dad who witnesses Union troops mount his son's severed heads upon his own land's fence. A longtime neighbor shot dead due to a past grudge. A shooter so frightening that top generals promised a reward of $300 in gold, an amount large enough to buy a whole village just to capture him. Even so, you will find no mention of his name in any history volume. Tonight we expose the raw, unpolished facts. How a neutral farmer outshot whole Union sniper battalions. How he directed Confederate legend Nathan Bedford Forrest to smash a huge network of Union supplies. And how the United States Army chased a specter for 24 complete months. A phantom who knew every inch of the territory between the two waterways for the simple reason that it was his own land. Was he a hero, a terrorist, or simply a broken man who tracked his grief by every bullet wound scar? Stay tuned, because the truths you will shortly learn will change every assumption you hold about the Civil War's buried episodes. When Jack Henson first built his big tobacco plantation across the fertile lowlands of Stewart County, Tennessee, he likely never imagined that his home would eventually become the center of a brutal fight between the Union and the Confederacy. The zone, which locals later named the land between the rivers for its placement tucked between the Cumberland and Tennessee waterways, became a tactical chessboard for military leaders. Its steep cliffs gave natural defensive spots, and its group of thriving farms offered endless resources for soldiers. Still, when Tennessee withdrew to join the Confederacy in 1861, Henson kept a shaky neutrality, torn between his southern roots and a realist's need to protect his household and property. Henson's land, like other nearby estates, had been carved from the wilderness through generations of labor by enslaved people. But by the time the war started, he had made the hard choice to free the individuals he had enslaved, a move that made his neighbors whisper. Many who were freed chose to stay on his property as paid laborers, a complicated arrangement that suggested both ongoing dependency and a delicate, fresh trust. This shaky calm was shattered when two of Henson's sons, swept up in the fervor of Southern rebellion, signed up with Confederate guerrilla bands. These irregular groups, formed of local forest dwellers, homesteaders, and passionate patriots, waged a secret war against the Union troops occupying their homeland, using their deep knowledge of wild trails to carry out ruthless ambushes. Union command, drilled for traditional combat, became more and more unnerved by these guerrilla methods. Green Union troops, many facing combat for the first time, jumped at each unexpected sound, their growing panic often turning into harsh payback against the nearby civilians. Right here is where Henson's story hits its saddest section. Folk tales handed down through families tell of Union troops storming the Henson farm in 1862, supposedly seizing two more sons on suspicion of being partisan fighters. The young men, so the legend goes, were executed without any court, and their severed heads were placed on the homestead's fence posts as a chilling warning to everyone else. Still, like many tales from that period, the boundary between proven fact and myth is blurry. Official Union records do not note this exact cruelty, leaving historians split. Did this awful event act as the spark that turned a neutral planter into the legendary Confederate sharpshooter nicknamed Old Jack? Or was Henson's neutrality ever truly honest, maybe a smart mask to gather intelligence on the Union from the officers he had to house? Skeptics note that Henson's later actions, a deadly marksman campaign aimed at Union vessels, would have demanded special top-grade rifles not usually owned by a common farmer. This feeds theories that he was quietly equipped by Confederate leaders who predicted the zone's vital strategic worth. Some historians argue that the pain of losing his boys, whether in battle or to alleged atrocities, mirrors the suffering of many Southern families, ordinary people forced into radical action by the brutal truths of military occupation. What is beyond dispute is that Henson's life reflects the war's ruinous effect on communities, where once familiar places turned into both safe havens and death zones, and trying to remain neutral often became an impossible dream. Henson's huge estate, placed along the fertile bends of the Tennessee River, once briefly held an uninvited guest, Union Commanding General Ulysses S. Grant. The general's staff took over the property for their planning during the 1862 push into the region, their shiny boots scraping the floors Henson had made with his own hands. This forced seizure, a sharp contrast to the name Henson would later build, marked the start of his resistance. Though researchers debate his precise motives, the agreement is that Union military actions were the hammer on which his rage was shaped. Troops looted farms under official commands, seizing stored crops and slaughtering animals, forcing families to endure hunger in the approaching winter months. Even the Union's main aim of freeing the enslaved was stained in practice. Soldiers freed captive people only to quickly force them into exhausting work crews, swapping one kind of owner for another. The worst disgrace came when Union soldiers torched Henson's house, the fire destroying decades of effort in mere hours. As his wife clutched their youngest child tightly, Henson watched the flames climb where his barn once stood, a man who had built his life through sweat, now owning nothing except the rifle he had hidden inside a farm implement. Neighbors whispered that he would stay completely motionless for long stretches, whispering, "A fellow cannot bend after his knees are burned out." His revenge began with a neighbor, a Swiss-born settler, whom Henson thought had tipped off Union troops about Confederate sympathizers. Their old feud, which had started with a dispute over a border in '58, turned deadly on the last night of 1862. Henson tracked his man to a frost-covered stream bed, letting off one round from his Kentucky long rifle. The echo rolled through the hollows where they had fished as boys, a private fight contained within the wider national clash. Now, fully on the side of the Southern irregulars, Henson turned into a specter, haunting the river routes. He learned by heart every sluggish bend of the Tennessee River where Union boats lost speed, their side wheels thrashing the water. Hidden among the stone cliffs, he could lie still for days, waiting for a soldier in uniform to step onto the deck. His .50 caliber gun, called Old Revenge, delivered a sentence that was final, every deadly shot marked by a fresh notch cut into the gun's walnut handle. Union troops spread scared tales of a spirit who could curve bullets in midair, though the truth was more simple. Henson held a deep grasp of each stream and shoreline tree from a whole life spent on these shores. The official count hit 36 by the war's end, though grizzled veterans in rural taverns swore the real number exceeded 100. His fame reached its peak when he guided Nathan Bedford Forrest's riders along secret trails to wipe out the Union Depot at Johnsonville in 1864. As flames ate through huge piles of Union food and bullets, Henson looked on from afar, a planter become saboteur, watching his enemy's power turn to smoke. Union leaders posted a $300 gold prize for his head, a sum that drew every treasure-seeker and schemer. But Henson dodged them all, once surviving for 3 days, nearly completely submerged in a swamp of cypress trees, breathing through a hollow plant stem while his hunters swept the shores. The war's finish brought him no calm. His boy Robert, who had led guerrilla strikes under his father's direction, was killed in a Union trap just weeks before the fighting stopped. 2 of his girls died in a freezing rough shelter, their sicknesses worsening with each icy dawn. Henson buried them near the burned-out ruins of his house, using flat stones from the river to mark their graves. The newly reunited nation had no room for his tale. Post-war Tennessee wanted stories of healing, not a gaunt widower who had once shot Union officers like they were practice targets. It was not until the 1920s that scholars dug up his name in old Army files and the journals of widows, stirring historical debate. Was he a rightful partisan, or a celebrated assassin, a defender of his ground, or a man too shattered by grief to stop? His gun now rests in a Nashville exhibit, the notches smoothed by the hands of endless visitors over the decades. Museum guides call him the deadliest sniper of the Civil War, but longtime residents along the Tennessee still speak quietly when telling how the war turned a farmer into a ghost and how the thirst for revenge, once lit, lasts long after a home has become ashes. 36 notches, 36 lives. But the true toll of Jack Henson's war can never be counted by notches in a stock. You must think of how many other family men picked up a rifle to become shooters, how many peaceful men learned to count their vengeance in used shells, and what is the ultimate cost a person pays when he swaps his farm gear for a weapon he could never force himself to set down. This is the lesson you will not find in school. The Civil War was not only huge armies meeting on battlefields, it was neighborhoods turning against each other. It was parents grieving for their sons and daughters. And for every famous hero written down in our books, there exists a Jack Henson, a man who walked away from his fields and into the shadows, making us question, was his fight justified? His weapon sits behind glass. His memory is buried in the dirt of Tennessee. And those 36 marks? They are more than just a number of dead. They are unsolved questions, questions about loyalty, vengeance, and the awful decisions forced upon people when violence shows up at their doorstep.